Pralada la da dayane. Hiranyakashipu bhakshaha. Silatam kanakalaye. Iton Risinga Paraton Risinga. Yato Yato Yamitaton Risinga. Bahen Risinga Ridaen Risinga. Narasinghamadem Sharanam Prapadye. Tavakara Kamalavare Nakamadvuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipo Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Janra Singha Dev, Janra Singha Dev, Nrsinga Dev, Janra Singha Dev. Jai Prahlad Maharaj, Jai Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, Jai Prahlad Maharaj. Nrsingadev Bhagavan ki, Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki, Go Premanande.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you for coming today and happy Father's Day to all the fathers. So thank you for joining our Sunday Love Feast today. So today's feast is prepared by Gilitz Namahata, led by His Grace Sampati Das. And if anyone would like to be a part of the feast preparation by doing some service such as cleaning vegetables or contributing financially, please, you can kindly contact Doyle Caitanya Das. You can see him when we serve out the prasadam later. So the topic for today is living by the Shastra with His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Swami Ki. So this week we will discuss how the principles of Shastra is applicable in every day and in every circumstance. So before we start with Maharaj, just a quick bio. I'm sure it's not needed, but you know. So His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Swami is originally from New Zealand. He joined the Hare Krishna movement in London in early 1973. He is an initiated disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and he is an initiating spiritual master with many disciples all around the world. And of course, he's been instrumental in the Sri Sri Radharanath Temple, as well as being the governing body commissioner of South Africa, ensuring a smooth functioning of ISKCON in South Africa. So thank you so much for everyone, and thank you, Maharaj, for joining us. Let's all welcome him with loudly chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Over to you, Maharaj.
Thank you. It's working, yes, excuse me. Well, thank you for that glowing introduction. Now, first of all, let us sing Jai Radha Madhava. I would ask Ishvara Puri Prabhu to sing, but I don't know if there's a harmonium. Do you want to? Would you like to sing anyway? Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Balava Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Balava Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Balava Giribaradhare. Gopijana Balava Giribaradhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnavad Paramahangsa Parivrajacharya Status His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Sri Sri Radha Radhanath Ki, Sri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I just wonder, to start off with, could someone please turn the volume up slightly? Someone, you did. You did. Okay. So, devotees, yes, as you heard, we're going to discuss Shastra in our lives. The role of Shastra and what is it all about, these types of things. So, first of all, I'm going to read a verse actually from Srimad Bhagavatam. But before I do that, please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, so we will read fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 16, which is titled Praise of King Prithu by the Professional Reciters. And we will read verse 1. Maitreya uvacha iti bruvanam nripatim gayaka munichodita tushtuvus tushta manasas tadvag amrita sevaya. Translation. The great sage Maitreya continued, while King Prithu thus spoke, the humility of his nectarian speeches pleased the reciters very much. Then again they continued to praise the king highly with exalted prayers, as they had been instructed by the great sages. Yes, it's an interesting verse, and there's quite a bit in it, maybe a bit more than might initially meet the eye. So let us read from the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, the word Muni Chodita indicates instructions received from great sages and saintly persons. Although Maharaj Prithu was simply enthroned on the royal seat and was not at that time exhibiting his godly powers, the reciters, like the Sutta, the Magadha, and the Vandi, understood that King Prithu was an incarnation of God. They could understand this by the instructions given by the great sages and learned Brahmins. We have to understand the incarnations of God by the instructions of authorized persons. We cannot manufacture a God by our own concoctions. As stated by Narottam Das Thakur, Sadhu, Shastra, Guru. One has to test all spiritual matters according to the instructions of saintly persons, scriptures, and the spiritual master. The spiritual master is one who follows the instructions of his predecessors, namely the sadhus, or saintly persons. A bona fide spiritual master does not mention anything not mentioned in the authorized scriptures. Ordinary people have to follow the instructions of sadhu, shastra, and guru. Those statements made in the shastras and those made by the bona fide sadhu or guru cannot differ from one another. Let me just read the verse again. Maitreya uvacha iti bruvanam nripatim gayaka munichodita tushtavus tushta manasas Tadvag amrita sevaya. The great sage Maitreya continued. While King Prithu thus spoke, the humility of his nectarian speeches pleased the reciters very much. Then again, they continued to praise the king highly with exalted prayers, as they'd been instructed by the great sages. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Deshatarne Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So devotees, living according to the Shastras, this is a deep subject, and in the purport we just read, Srila Prabhupada, Shri Shri Radharatnath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada was discussing the situation in regard to the scriptures from a slightly broader perspective, although it's not really a broader perspective. It's more just like the perspective. Yes. And it's very important to grasp this. Otherwise, anyway, I think you'll see how Prabhupada emphasizes. I'm going to read another little passage from a conversation of Srila Prabhupada's, and I think you'll get the idea that the picture is a little broader. Yeah. So the verse, though, that Srila Prabhupada is referring to in the purport, or part of a verse really, from Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitte Te Korea Aikya. That Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya means the words of the sadhus, the Shastras, the scriptures, and the spiritual master or spiritual masters. Vakya meaning words. Chitte te Korea Aikya. Chitta basically means the consciousness or the heart, the essence of who we are, what we are. Just, yes, really what we are. Chitte te Korea Aikya. Aikya means one. Korea Aikya means make one. These words from the sadhus, from the scriptures, the Shastras, and the words from the spiritual master or spiritual masters, you should make those one with yourself, with your life, with you, in the most essential sense. But all three of them, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya. So, of course, here our subject matter particularly is the Shastras, the scriptures. And I don't know, maybe next week they're going to have a class on Sunday, what would you say? How to make the words of the sadhus the essence of your life, or build your life around them. And maybe the following week it'll be dedicate your lives in terms of the words of the Guru. And of course it's possible to, you could say, separate these things in certain senses. And there's certain particular features of each of those three, the spiritual persons, the scriptures, and the spiritual masters. But here, as Prabhupada's presented it in the purport, well, Narottam Das Thakur says, Chitte te Kuriya Aikya, make these one. So, in other words, in a very important sense, you cannot just separate them and sort of compartmentalize each one as distinct from the others. They're all together, they're part of one picture, essential parts of one picture. And ultimately, that fact is more important than how, in certain respects, each one of them can be looked at to some extent separate from the others. I hope you get the idea. And Prabhupada said here that a bona fide spiritual master does not mention anything not mentioned in the authorized scriptures. So that's very literally a oneness. It's very literally a oneness that, for example, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharman parichaja mamekam sharanam braja. Give up all other, just everything else actually, particularly all other dharmas or types of religious activity, and just surrender to me. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, which of course is very much Shastra. And the bona fide spiritual master, the bona fide sadhu, says that you should give up everything else and just surrender to Krishna. So there's a very clear, and it's very straightforward actually, that there's a oneness there. So just to sort of emphasize this point, I want to read something right now. It's just very short, about 3 or 4 sentences or so, from Srila Prabhupada, from a discussion he had with Satsvarup Das Goswami many years ago, when Satsvarup Maharaj was involved in the publication of Srila Prabhupada's books, and just the whole production of Prabhupada's books, the editing and putting them together, and then finally the printing of them. And so in this little conversation, Satsvarup Maharaj asks Prabhupada, Prabhupada's purports are there, but he asks Prabhupada, what are we going to do about the verses? Like, this is really, this is a major point. What are we going to do about the verses? And Satsvarup Maharaj recalls, Prabhupada says, just copy the verses from some other translation. He tells me, discarding the whole matter with a wave of his hand. Yeah, you might be interested, you might even be a little shocked to hear that the first version of Bhagavad Gita that was printed, of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, printed by the Macmillan Publishing Company, in it, Srila Prabhupada had, for the translations, he just had the devotees literally take, word for word, the translations from the Ramakrishna or Dr. Radha Krishna, his Bhagavad Gita, his version. Little later, Srila Prabhupada did his own translations, or dropped those from Dr. Radha Krishna and put his own translations, because even though those translations were on the whole, or just the majority of them, were acceptable enough, but there are a few places where they weren't acceptable enough. For example, in the 18th chapter, where Lord Krishna discusses the duties of the different varnas, occupational groups, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. So when it comes to the occupational duties of the Vaishyas, Lord Krishna says, in the verse itself, Lord Krishna says that one of the main duties of the Vaishyas is Go Raksha. Go Raksha. And even if you just understand a little Hindi, you would understand that go, of course, means cows, and Raksha means to protect. So one of the foundational duties of Vaishyas is to protect cows. But in that other translation, what was put there was cattle raising. Cattle raising. And when when this was pointed out to Prabhupada, he dropped those translations and had his own translation put in. But anyway, okay, let's just read this. So just copy the verses from some other translation, he tells me, discarding the whole matter with a wave of his hand. And listen to this. Listen carefully. Prabhupada said, the verses aren't important. There are so many translations more or less accurate, and the Sanskrit is always there. It's my purports that are important. Concentrate on the purports. There are so many nonsense purports, like, he mentions a few, well, I'll just read it, like Radhakrishnan's, the same person, Gandhi's, with all due respect, and Nikhilananda's. What is lacking are these Vaishnav purports in the preaching line of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. That is what is lacking in English. That is what is lacking in the world. So, just earlier today I was looking through different statements of Srila Prabhupada in relation to the subject matter. And in a number of places, at least devotees like, this was Satsvarup Maharaj, also Tamal Krishna Goswami, devotees who really spent time with Prabhupada very closely. And they were emphasizing this point that Prabhupada is making here. It's my purports that are important. Concentrate on the purports. Because the verses, in certain respects, the verses, or many of the verses, they're kind of like sutras, if you know what I mean by that. Sutra means like a very succinct, extremely succinct, even very condensed, and therefore not just like obviously clear in meaning, but statements like that. And it's not difficult, particularly for people who are not experienced in these things, it's not difficult for them to become confused. In fact, it's just far too easy. And it happens, and it has happened. So what is really required is to, you could say, unpack those things and make it clear, what is Krishna actually talking about? And make it clear. And this is what Srila Prabhupada's purports are. And therefore, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya, Chitte Te Kuriya Aikya, we cannot really separate, like make independent from each other, the words of the previous devotees, the great leading devotees in the line, the words of Scripture itself, and the words of the spiritual master or spiritual masters. One has to look at them together. Otherwise, unless one is expert, experienced, then it's basically inevitable mistake will be there. So this is a very important point in this, the whole picture, when we talk about let's live according to Shastra. Let's live according to Shastra. Even when we look at Shastra, as we have, as Srila Prabhupada has given us, we have, of course, very foundational Bhagavad Gita. It's Krishna. It's simply Krishna speaking, preaching to Arjuna. And Arjuna doesn't really, he asks a few questions here and there, but it's not really that Arjuna makes any real philosophical statements of his own. That's all coming from Krishna himself. But then we look at Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the next step after Bhagavad Gita. Actually, it's known as the emperor of all evidences. Srila Jiva Goswami, in one of his literatures, Tattva Sandarbha, explores the subject of where will we get information from about reality, life, God, all these things. From where? And, it's a bit of a long story, but his conclusion is from Srimad Bhagavatam. Not even just from Bhagavad Gita, but for those who've understood Bhagavad Gita, they should go on to Srimad Bhagavatam. It's for the graduates, like in university, those who've got the bachelor's degree, they may go on to a graduate course, some master's course, something like that. So, but now, interesting thing, in regard to this particular point of sadhu, shastra, guru, vakya, when you read Srimad Bhagavatam, so much of it is spoken by the sadhus. There are things like 11th canto. 11th canto is Lord Krishna instructing Uddhava. In the 2nd canto, there is Lord Krishna giving his 4 main instructions to Lord Brahma, which are the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact. But otherwise, Like this verse I just read at the beginning. It's Maitreya speaking. And he's not an incarnation of Krishna. He's a devotee. And throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, there's so much. Narada Muni is speaking again and again on different subjects very elaborately, and Maitreya and so many others. But Srimad Bhagavatam is definitely Shastra. It's practically the topmost. But we see it's got the sadhus, their words are interwoven through it. And it's the greatest practically. So like this, you cannot really separate these different sources. And then we've got Caitanya Charitamrita, which is for the those who've already done the postgraduate. It's like for those who are doing the doctorate levels. Caitanya Charitamrita, all about Lord Chaitanya, but there's so much there, explanation and description from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who we would say is a sadhu, but it's so authentic, extremely authentic. When we talk about just the words of the Supreme Lord directly, like from his mouth as such, then there's the four Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva Vedas. Generally they're spoken, at least the main parts, the Samhitas, are spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself directly. And then, like I said, Bhagavad Gita, of course, we know, spoken by the Supreme Lord directly. But as Jiva Goswami has explained, like painstakingly examining the situation, that actually Srimad Bhagavatam is higher than the four Vedas. It's considerably higher than the four Vedas. Yes. So these are some interesting points when we talk about Shastra. When we talk about Shastra, then, that's Jai Sachinandan Prabhu. I can't criticize him. If it was someone else, I'd criticize you and threaten to take your telephone away. Oh, Krishna. Yeah, okay. So when we talk about Shastra, we cannot, to get the picture clear, we have to include both, all, sadhu and Shastra, like the words of the Lord, and Guru. That's the picture that we need to make things complete. Of course, the words of the Supreme Lord himself, where they appear, in certain places in throughout the Bhagavad Gita, of course, but certain places in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna speaks, like I mentioned in the 11th canto. Lord Nrsingadev speaks to Prahlad in the 7th canto, and various... Oh, shall I confiscate it? And then we can sell it to, pay off some of the costs of everything. Yeah, you should switch off your phones. It's kind of, isn't it, a little bit like bad manners in a public forum to just have your phone ringing. So the words of the Lord, though, as such, where they appear here and there is a special type of importance to them. And to just illustrate that, I'm going to read 2 verses from actually another book. It's a book called Stotra Ratna, extremely beautiful, written by Yamunacharya, the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya. Great, great Vaishnav. Listen to this. The first little verse is just for interest's sake. It's amazing. An amazing statement. Listen to this. Desiring to measure one of your transcendental qualities, my Lord. Desiring to measure one of your transcendental qualities. The words of the Vedas again and again multiply by 100 the qualities of the demigod Brahma. Just try and take this in. The Vedas again and again multiply by 100 the qualities of the demigod Brahma. Although eternally engaged in this way, they cannot cross beyond even one of your qualities. That's just by the way, for interest's sake. It's just such a beautiful statement. But now listen to this. This is really quite something. The creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material universes, the granting of liberation from the cycle of birth and death, a host of other actions you playfully perform, and the words of the Vedas, which are the thoughts sheltered deep in your heart, are all meant for the benefit of they who take shelter of you. So that's a very, really amazing and beautiful statement. The words of the Vedas, which are the thoughts sheltered deep in your heart, they're all meant for the benefit of they who take shelter of you. So definitely wherever the Lord is speaking, like in Bhagavad Gita, wherever the Lord is speaking and like making an appeal to a devotee or to someone to be a devotee, like this. These are the thoughts. These are not just, it's not just some philosophy, some ideas, just some description of reality, although that's also there. But it's more than that. The Lord is a person. So the words of the Vedas, the words that Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita, the words he speaks to Uddhava in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, the words he speaks to Prahlad as Lord Nrsimhadev, and in various other places, the words he speaks as Lord Caitanya. It's very personal. It's very personal. The Lord is revealing his perspective on things, but he's revealing his heart. So when we talk about Shastra, from all these perspectives, the words of the sadhus, the words of the Lord himself in his different forms, the words of different gurus, the words of Srila Prabhupada, we're essentially speaking of one thing. And these are very deep. These are very deep. Directly or indirectly, we're being invited into the heart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're being invited. What is Prabhupada doing in his classes, in his purports? What is Prabhupada doing? He's inviting us to develop a relationship with Krishna. Become a devotee of Krishna. If you are a devotee of Krishna, become a better devotee. Take it more seriously. Get into it more. Chant more. Chant better. Really take these things seriously. They're all part of a relationship. They're all part of a relationship. They're not just like sadhana. Sadhana means practice. Do this, don't do that. That's sadhana. Just learn how to do the right things and in this way improve yourself. But that's all there to help us to develop the relationship with Krishna. As Srila Prabhupada said, at least His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj told us, that Srila Prabhupada told him, that Krishna consciousness is, like the whole process, the way of life. Krishna consciousness is the development of a relationship with Krishna, disguised as a process. So, disguised as a process, 16 rounds, not 15. 4 regulative principles, not 3. Do it in this way, do it in that way. It's a process, and for that matter, Srila Prabhupada on numerous occasions referred to it as a process, actually. But it's more just like a manner of speaking. Actually, what it is, what we're doing, when, for example, when we're chanting our 16 rounds, and if, we hope, we're actually trying to chant nicely. We're trying to chant better. What we're doing is not just doing the right thing, but we're improving our relationship with Krishna. So therefore, my point here is that in regards to Shastra, the words of Sadhu, the words of the Supreme Lord, the words of the spiritual masters, like Prabhupada, particularly Prabhupada's words in his purports, in his classes, it's all part of something very personal, the development of relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, when we look at Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna, and he's trying to convince us via his convincing Arjuna to become a devotee. Become a devotee. Don't be a materialist. Don't be just a conditioned soul, but be a devotee. Manmana bhava mad bhakto. Think of me. Become my devotee. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. And worship me in a formal sense. And offer your respects to me. Offer homage to me. What Krishna is really saying, what he's doing, he's revealing his heart that I want to have a loving relationship with you. Not that I just want you to become one of my workers or something like that, free labor, whatever. Not that I just want you to do the right thing and not do the wrong thing. But he actually wants to have a relationship with every single one of us. Despite what we are or what we've become through many lifetimes in this material world. But Krishna has such a heart. If you've been in some sort of what would be termed a loving relationship in this world, then you'd know there are many ups and downs. If anyone tells you there are only ups and no downs, you must know they're not telling you the truth. Yeah. The relationships from time to time, even the best one on the material level, is challenging. So, and why is it challenging? Because we are sort of challenging. We have our shortcomings. I mean, we really do. But Krishna is such a loving person. Well, anyway, I was saying about normal relationships. Now you have a relationship, it's okay or it's good, but then in some cases, these relationships fall to pieces. Or, at least maybe deteriorate. And in some cases, a person reaches the point that I just cannot continue with this person. Or at least, it's a battle continuing with this person because they do this or don't do that. Yeah, and therefore, sometimes people abandon relationships. We abandoned our relationship with Krishna long ago, really long ago, and we became someone who, is not very lovable, actually. Generally selfish and judgmental, like that. But Krishna is such a loving person that despite us dumping him and sort of again and again dumping him, he still perseveres in the relationship and tries to bring us back to him. And he's still doing it today, this very day. So what a person is Krishna. His qualities, as we read the first verse we just read just now, desiring to measure one of your transcendental qualities, the words of the Vedas again and again multiply by 100 the qualities of the demigod Brahma. Although eternally engaged in this way, they cannot cross beyond even one of your qualities. So what a person is Krishna. He's truly lovable and truly worthy of being loved. But what are we? We are prone to be ingrates, to be ungrateful and selfish and whimsical and stupid and all sorts of things like that. But Krishna has persevered with us. So to follow Shastra in our lives, to follow Sadhu, Shastra and Guru in our lives, the essence of what it means is to reawaken our forgotten loving relationship with Krishna and to really try our best, even though we have weaknesses which just undermine our best interests again and again, but still to really do our best to keep our lives or get our lives in line with sadhu, shastra, and guru, to get our lives in line with them, and particularly for us to keep our lives, get our lives and keep our lives in line with the words of Srila Prabhupada, because he has captured the essence of all these things from all the sadhus, from all the shastras, from all the different forms of the Lord, the different gurus. Prabhupada has captured it all. Shri Shri Radharatna Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So, devotees, let us try to do that. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so we will have, I don't suppose there's any questions, or, oh gosh. Jai Sachinandan Prabhu, you're going to make a comment.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. You were emphasizing the point of knowledge according to sadhu, shastra, and guru. What happens in a case when one contradicts the other? How do we?
Yeah, okay. If it appears that there's some conflict between different versions on the same point, then what we should do, is accept the perspective of Srila Prabhupada. That's what we do. You know, if we try to outsmart the system, it won't work. So, you know, the thing is, regarding certain, like, events or even well, you could say philosophical points, in terms of different, when they're applied in terms of different circumstances, sometimes there may be a change. And Srila Prabhupada, in those places where, you know, it would be possible to look on a particular situation from certain different, slightly different perspectives, we would accept the perspective of Srila Prabhupada. It's the safest thing to do, and it's the right thing to do for us. Is that okay?
Like there's so many versions of Bhagavad Gita. It's like something like 600 versions of Bhagavad Gita floating around. And Prabhupada established that Bhagavad Gita as it is.
Right.
And many people were misled by, didn't establish Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, I mean, if we look at it from that perspective, yes. And Srila Prabhupada made the point that even though there's so many versions of Bhagavad Gita in English also, but not one of them made one devotee of Krishna. And his Bhagavad Gita just, you know, suddenly over a few short years produced thousands of devotees and more than thousands eventually, yeah. So, I mean, in that sense, yes, we would accept Prabhupada and not the words of this Swami or that Swami or someone like that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Just bear with us, devotees. Here we.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Loud and clear.
I just wanted to check if if we have a situation where the need is there to serve sadhu and guru maybe, and neglect Shastra, or opposite, one feels that they need to read more and then neglect serving sadhu, is that something that can be done, or should we try and get a balance of all?
I couldn't hear that.
So in terms of like serving guru sadhu and
Serving, yeah?
Shastra, is there, can we neglect one and focus on the other two, for instance, serving sadhu and
Serving.
guru? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, in Prabhupada's movement, in ISKCON, we are serving Guru as Srila Prabhupada. He is the spiritual master of all of us. So we should do what service Srila Prabhupada wants us to do. How to determine that? Well, you may have to refer to the Prabhupada would have you refer to the authority system of ISKCON. Yeah. If there's a choice between different services in Prabhupada's movement, we should follow the direction of Prabhupada's representatives. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Rasaraj Prabhu.
So we should also accept. So the purports that Prabhupada, he writes, it's like a letter, like a personal letter to us. Dear so and so does, and at the end of the purport, after the message, it's your ever well wisher. So we've heard devotees say that we should accept the purport as a personal message or a letter to us. But dear, ending with your ever well wisher, Srila Prabhupada.
That's a comment.
Well, I've heard devotees say that, and we should accept, should we accept, it's like a personal letter to us.
When Prabhupada writes a letter.
When Prabhupada, we should accept Prabhupada's purport.
Oh, I see. Yes. Prabhupada is addressing us personally in his purports. They're not just some sort of general words, but he's speaking to us. Prabhupada's speaking to us personally to help us individually. Hare Krishna. Okay. 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 So shall we have some kirtan? All right. So thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.